How many of us have old photo albums like this? Now, yours might not go back to the 70s because you're younger, but so this is a photo album that now, of course, the pages are getting yellow and things aren't, you can't make out the pictures as well. But these are the kind of photo albums that I have in my linen closet. And I never got to the phase of decorating scrapbooks with photos, and all the stickers and the cutouts. I mean, I thought it was amazing, but it's like, there's no way I have time for that. So do you identify with that? I am Charmaine Tanner from Collaborative Special Education Advocacy. I'm a parent, a retired teacher, and host of our weekly Facebook Live here. And I also advocate for families. So we make sure that their kids get the education that they deserve. And I'm thrilled because today we're going to be talking about ways that we can combine stories and photographs to really help staff and other people understand our kids better. So what we're going to be talking about today, you could use that to replace your About Me handout, or you could use what we're going to be describing today as something that you bring to IEP meetings or ARD meetings. And you might have your child there going through and explaining things and showing. And so I'm excited because I have a new friend from Texas, and I know we have quite a few viewers from Texas too. And so I wanted to bring on, and let me take this part down. I want to bring on Barb, and I'm going to chicken out on trying to say your last name. So Barb, tell us how you say that.
I can't even say it. 42 years later. Orozco. Yes.
Orozco. Okay. So when I saw a couple of those O's in the R, I thought of Oreo, but
yeah. And the Z, it's like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with all those O's and Z's? Yeah.
Well, Barb and I met in a different Facebook group that is for people interested in learning more about Facebook Lives. And it was so fun to find out she's also a parent. She's also a retired special educator, a general educator, an inclusion facilitator, an advocate. And it's like, we're twins, just in different states.
Yeah.
But Barb has developed a system since 2003. She decided to screw scrapbooking and instead help people understand that there's ways to combine photos and stories. And she has this, this wonderful saying of photos grab attention, stories capture hearts. So I'm so excited that you are here with us live, Barb, and our viewers. If you're watching the replay, welcome. Make sure you post comments and questions. And Barb, can you share a little bit more about your story?
I'd be happy to. And really, Charmaine, I love what you're doing with special ed, with special needs, with just everything that you're doing. And it's such a pleasure to be here today. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I started teaching special ed in 1975 in a very traditional way, and very quickly was disturbed that why am I taking these kids out of the class? Why am I separating them? It was a pullout thing, and why are all these segregated classrooms, etc. Well, it cut to 15 years later, 13 years later, and I'm getting my master's degree, and I am an inclusion facilitator. Let's actually cut back a little bit. In 1980, my first child was born, and she had special needs. So it became even more imperative that I find a way that she wouldn't be segregated and that her needs would be met. And so then cut to 1988, and I went ahead and got the degrees and really was blessed to be able to really sink into inclusion and professionally and personally. And every classroom I ever taught, at K1, 2, 6th through 11th grades, those grades were actually multi-age groups and multi-ability. Everything I ever did from that point on was all inclusion. And while I retired from teaching, public school teaching in 1998, I've been teaching ever since, because and I've been doing an inclusion facilitator role, because I started to homeschool my grandson, who we've raised, who's now almost 20, and homeschooled him for 5 years, and was able to really hone. Oh my gosh, when I realized that photos and stories, that these scrapbooks, as a matter of fact, I never would use the word scrapbook. If anyone said scrapbook in the vicinity of my hearing, my kids would like cower. Like, oh no, she's going to go off. Because every time I would even just mention photos, people would immediately think decorative scrapbooking. So scrapbooking was a bad word. Once I realized that real scrapbooking for 3 centuries was memorabilia and stories on a page, and then photos added once photography was developed. Once I realized that was the true definition of scrapbooking, and that what transpired in 1980, which then developed into crafty scrapbooking, it was amazing. And then I was able to well, wait till I tell you. I was able to see how I could use photos and stories to really capture the attention of kids as they're learning to read and write. But that's coming.
Yes. And that's the thing that is so neat, because there's so many applications. There's so many ways that we can combine photos and stories, and in different situations. I think, we're, mainly focused on the education world, but, also in other places, even with other family members, I think it can be helpful to have those stories combined with your photos, to help your family members understand your child better and see that big picture of your child. So it's not something that we can just use with teachers, even though I think that's probably going to be one of the ways that a lot of parents use it. But we'll also share some other stories today about other situations where it's like made a huge difference in people getting to know people. And I think that, is the bottom line. Like when Barb and I were talking yesterday, I said, as a teacher, I think you feel more connected to the students that you know more about their life, about the whole being, versus what the IEP says, what last year's teacher said. And when you know the family and when you have a connection with the family, I think teachers are more motivated to, even help and support your child to a greater degree. So I think being able to share your child's story is has a huge impact. So I know you have some stories of students that you've worked with, or ideas that you see how parents could share this at IEP meetings or our meetings. So why don't you share a couple of those?
I'm happy to. There are really 3 ways that I want to talk about how we can use photos and stories. And it's a little dicey for me to talk about that, because I've been doing this since 2002. And in speaking engagements and training classes, etc., I found that unless the people I'm talking to are so brainwashed. I was so brainwashed with what were scrapbooking lies, the myths of scrapbooking, that it's like they're looking at me, they're hearing they see my lips moving, but they're not. It's like, I'm not doing that decorating. I'm not doing, even though I'm saying, don't ever decorate. Don't ever. It's not like you can make it better by decorating. No, that page is very valuable real estate. And by putting papers, by taking the energy, do we have a lot of energy for this kind of thing? By taking what little energy we have and putting it into, should this paper go here? Should it go here? What color is that, the right shade? Is that no. What my message is that, okay, so where I was going with that is, as I'm sharing this, it can be hard to hear what I'm saying, really hear it, if you're still thinking, yeah, but really the right way is to do decorative pages. Yeah, yeah, but that's the way my sister does it, and my mom does it, and my aunt does it, and my best friend does it. So that's really the right way to do it. It's not. It can be the right way for some people, but it's very important. Before I tell you these really cool things, it's really important to understand that if you're going to use the word right, the right way to do it, the definition of true scrapbooking, and that's why people don't run now when that word is said in front of me, because it's not scrapbooking that's the problem. It's the stuff we've been taught about it that is the problem. So the true definition, please hear me, photos and stories on a page. That's it. The offshoot of that could be decorating. It certainly could be. I'm not the decorating police. But for most of us, photos and stories on a page, because there's so much to say and there's so many ways to use this. That's where we need to spend our energy. So if you can suspend disbelief just for a little bit and hear what I'm saying, I think you could find this really beneficial. So please, photos and stories on a page. Okay? Can we agree?
Yes. Except, when I think about that, when I look at my college album from the 70s here, I'm glad there are no stories that go with these pictures.
Oh.
Sometimes there's an exception, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, sometimes. Like I said, I'm not the photos and stories police either. So my goal here is just to hopefully open your eyes the way mine were opened. Hey, you all, I was totally steeped in the only right way is decorate. The only right way is to decorate. And you know where it got me? Massive amounts of printed photos, massive amounts stuffed all over the place. And then when digital came in, I had not yet perfected the process for that. So I had quite a backlog of digital photos. Excuse me. They aren't photos until they're printed. Digital images.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah, that's true.
We don't have negatives anymore. And we really, there are people saying that 10 years from now, this current generation is really at risk of having no photos at all. Because we're just leaving them on our phones. We're putting them in computers. We're putting them on blogs thinking, okay, my job is done, but there's nothing tangible.
Right. That's true.
And so if we went onto our blog and wrote, oh my gosh, this kid knocked my socks off. I noticed him do this and this and this. In order for that child to ever see that again, they're going to have to search. If it's on Facebook, they're going to have to scroll. Whereas if you get it printed out and right there, they might have to look through a few books, but they're going to have fun doing it.
Oh, that's a great tip. Yeah.
So if you can suspend disbelief, and I've been doing this since 2002, I know what I'm talking about. I've got some really cool things, ways that I used it, ways that so many of my clients have used them. So may I launch into number one?
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that I used to do, and again, I'm in Texas. Here in my city, they're called staffings. We would have staffings at the first of the year. Don't know what anyone else is doing. And they would generally last 20 minutes or so. My team knew that when I was holding a staffing for my grandson, because here's the deal, guys. I didn't know what I'm telling you when my daughter was growing up. I didn't know it. And that's part of my motivation. I didn't have these albums put together to share at IEPs, to share with her therapists, to share with anyone who needed to see her as a whole human being instead of just the area of weakness where they're providing the therapy. I didn't have this for her. I didn't have it for the second thing I'm going to share with you is how to use them to support her siblings, because she was getting tons of attention, and our goal is to give everyone attention and to take care of our marriages. And I didn't have this because I kept buying scrapbooking stuff and couldn't do anything with it because it was all decorative. Right. So it just languished. And then, had I only known about the third thing I'm going to share with you, which is the academic, had I only known, let's put it this way: there's no guarantee. I may have implemented this knowledge with her, and it would have made no difference. But I don't know that. I know. And I wanted tools in my toolbox to use. And if that doesn't work, okay, fine, I'll do this. But I didn't know it. I knew it with Tyler. I knew it with her son, who we've raised. And it's made such a huge difference that I want you to know. So, okay. Number one, so I would bring in, back to the staffing, I would bring in albums. And because he's such a visual learner, it prompted him to be able to talk about himself. And I would notice that I would have it sitting on the table, and people who were attending the staffing would be looking at it just on their own, because it had stories with it. See, we're told that photos are worth 1,000 words. They're only worth 1,000 words at the very moment they're taken, or within the next few days, before the context is forgotten. What really is of value is the story, is what we're writing. Even if you had to make a choice between writing photos, putting photos in an album for your child or anyone else, and stories, you can only do one or the other, go with stories, because that's what's going to give the context, the feeling, everything that's important to convey. So they would just be looking at it on their own. It was also a way, again, the steps are very, very simple. I'm going to simplify it super much right now. You take a photo, you put it on a page, and you write. Okay? It doesn't have to be harder than that. Can there be a more to it in terms of some steps that are repeatable and that you can just do forever, and as well as the quality of the product so that it's there. You never know what the right words will be at the right time. If you write something today that someone 15 years from now needs to read, that could make all the difference for them. So that's why the quality of the material matters. Anyway.
Barb, I wondered, because for people like me that feel not confident in writing, so I wonder if you could give us some tips on, and then the other part is like keep perfecting it before you actually use it. So a tip on how we can be more confident in our storytelling, and when we need to stop editing it and just leave it be and actually use it.
Oh, that's beautiful. Thank you. Okay. You don't edit it.
Huh.
You write it and you move along.
Huh.
You don't write it down and practice it and then recopy it. All of that stuff will have you not doing it.
I know.
All of that stuff will have you take up precious time from the time you could be doing something else.
Right.
So if you write, let's say you've done a digital book and you've proofed it. Proofing should be a few minutes and you're done, not the hours and days that some people take, because heaven forbid there be a mistake. And this is one of the things that I talk, this is part of the support I provide. It's like, snap out of it. Let's do the most important thing, photos and stories on a page. Let's say you've done a digital book, you've done whatever whatever review that you should do without going overboard, and it comes back and there are some mistakes. Who cares? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if there are mistakes. It doesn't matter. There are even some very special pens made. It's not one of my companies, but I can send it to you, that you could actually add a missing word if you want to, that wouldn't rub off the page. But it doesn't matter. I don't know how else to say it. None of that stuff matters. You don't write it beforehand. You don't practice. You just write it. You just write it.
Right. That's great. That's like freeing, right? It like gives yourself permission, like, I can do this.
Yeah. It's not about creating a work of art. It's about creating a work of heart.
Ooh.
And if you're worried about, oh gosh, my pages don't look as beautiful as my sister's or my whoever's. Again, it's what is your why? What is your why? Are you doing it as an artistic release? Which there is value in that. There's even research out there saying that that can really help with health-related kinds of things, to immerse yourself in that. So I'm not downplaying that at all. What I'm saying is, there's never been a sticker or a decoration made or a page layout with that stuff made that will tell people what our writing will tell them. So what is your why? If it is to use it as an emotional, psychological support for your family, for yourself, doing an album for yourself is, anyway, it's pretty cool. To be able to be able to go back, especially when you're going, have I made any difference at all? Truly, I mean, really, have I made any difference at all? To be able to go back to an album that you've put together where, yes, indeed, you have made a difference. This particular thing stinks, but you have made a difference. Okay, anyway, get me back on topic.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're doing fine. So, I know you have some stories about some students. So maybe,
gosh, yes,
I think it's really helpful sometimes for people to have a couple examples. So that might be a good point.
So you think a story could be helpful to learning?
What an awesome idea.
Everybody learns best via story. Everybody, there's not anyone who doesn't learn best via story. And I found that people who say they don't need story usually need story. But so let me just share, then I have permission. I have permission to use names, etc. I was I'll start with, when I started homeschooling Ty, that was a whole new world for me. And we joined a homeschool co-op. And so I taught because I'm really steeped in alternate learning. And I taught a very visual math class and a very visual reading and writing class using photos and stories. There's a very specific process. You don't just go, okay, I'm going to do this. There's a very specific process that really creates a structure and scaffolding under the learning so that it's really happening. But photos and stories are the main part of it. This is just one of so many kids. Cam came into the class, and he was young, but not that young. I mean, many kids would have been reading by then and writing comfortably, and he was not. And I didn't know this. I knew nothing about this, but we used photos of them and their activities, and then a specific writing kind of, they couldn't just say, this was fun, this was fun, this was fun, this was fun. They have to use connector words and etc. And I honestly did not know any of this until the very end of that semester, when his mom came to me and she said, I just want you to know, because Cam was writing and he was reading in that class. He was developing that. She said, when he felt so bad about himself. His brother, he was one of 5. His brothers and sisters have been reading just fine, but he has not. And I've been working with him and doing all this stuff, but it was all phonics based. And she said by using photos and stories, he was totally immersed in it and doing it and loving it and reading it to people at home. And he is not the only example. And speaking as a teacher in a classroom who taught in inclusive classes, it's a process that could also be used in those classes. This is not, well, that was homeschool, but we can't do it in public school. Yes, we can.
Oh, I totally agree. And it's like, it makes such, I mean, when you talk about trying to engage kids and motivate kids, when there's photos of themselves doing things or their family or their pets or whatever, I mean, you've hooked the kid, right? So yeah, there's so many applications of combining the photos and the stories. So I love that. I love that.
I mean, I went into homeschooling kicking and screaming. I didn't want to do it because it's a commitment. But Tyler started kindergarten and it was phonics. He has the same challenges as his mom. And I kept explaining to them, and no, come in for tutorials. He needs to have 2 tutorials a week. I said, but tutoring him in the way that he doesn't learn isn't going to it's not going to do anything except make him feel horrible. We went through first grade. And then I actually had an educational consultant come in and observe where he was going to be going in second grade, etc. And he walked out of the school and he said, get him out. Just get him out. I said, doggone it, I don't want to homeschool. So I did. And it was phenomenal because Tyler went from feeling like an outcast, like feeling like kids would point at him because he did have some differences. And then he felt badly about himself that he was struggling with reading and writing. I mean, really struggling. And then, but once I got him home and was able to do the storied photos based learning, he started to thrive. And I can only say that because his language therapist is still with us today. And she says that here's the problem. If I hadn't done that, if anyone knows phonics rules are, they like contradict each other. There are so many rules and so many layers that learning to sound things out when you're not strong auditorily and linguistically is ridiculous. And he would have continued to struggle and feel just horrible about himself. She pointed out to me that because I took him out and got him, and I'm not saying you have to homeschool, but I'm just trying to point out that there's another way to learn, and there are other benefits. And I bet you could even do this just at home alongside whatever's going on at school. But anyway, she said, have him learn to read via the storied photos process. And then once he's a reader, then you can introduce the phonics rules. Then you can introduce those so that he will have that for some decoding later on. But if we're going to do that before he's reading, he'll never be the strong reader that he could be.
Wow. Yeah. And I think that's, a perfect example of looking at the unique needs of kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
And as family members, we sometimes almost innately can see that. And to then help bridge that gap and have the teachers at school also see that this would be a great learning strategy that they could use with kids and with all kids, right?
Right. And I've done that as an inclusion facilitator in some trainings. I've demonstrated and showed it, and they've tried it.
Right. So I want to show your website link, but do you want to tell people about there's a process that you've experimented with for a number of years and honed into, this is really a good step-by-step way of doing it.
Yeah, how a lot of people will say, well, you'll figure it out, whatever is a match for your brain and whatever. And that works in a lot of different things. I've been doing this a long time, that it's just going to create havoc. That to have someone get a program to create a digital book and say, now you do what feels right to you, doesn't work. And so, yes, I did. Yeah. Molly Mahoney says she's the crash test dummy. I was the crash test dummy on all of this because I felt all the frustration. I felt all the everything with my photos, and then created this process, 4-step process called Zip Layout. And it's a very straightforward process it depends, because I have clients who do traditional albums, and then clients who do digital albums. So the process changes, just shifts a little bit with digital, but it's the same 4 steps. And it's, basically tossing, sticking, telling, and editing. I mean, it's depending on which process. And so, it is very rigid, I have to say. And I've had several, when you follow it, it's going to become second nature. I have a client who just this summer used to do all sorts of decoration and really resisted. And then she stopped doing anything in her albums because she ran out of time with all the decorating. And she said, I just want to do my 2014 album. I just want to do that. And she said, okay, I'll try your process. And she finished her album in a matter of days, literally days. And she said it would have been faster had it not been interrupted by graduations, etc. And she did her first book. She said, oh my gosh, it's great. And then she just did her second book. Oh my gosh, it's great. But I said to her, you got to follow the process. You can't. It's what I've done is I've put together, even though it sounds real simple, I've put together tutorials in an online learning portal that when people invest in the program, whatever, which is very inexpensive, that comes with it. All the tutorials, so you can work on it at 2:00 in the morning, but it ensures success. But I said to her, as you're doing this, you might look and think, oh no, I could do it better this way. Don't. Because every time someone calls me and says, Barb, your process isn't working, and then we go through it step by step, they've changed it. So let's keep it simple and just do it. Okay? Just do it.
And I think that is like a huge time saver because, sometimes putting our photos together and then thinking, okay, now I'm going to also add a story to it. It's like, who has time? But that's the nice thing I think about when you learn from an expert like Barb. It's like, I've figured this out, folks. I've been doing it for a number of years. And if you really follow this 4-step process, you are going to come to completion and you are going to be so thrilled with the end result. So,
the very first thing that we have to do, though, is we have to get the head trash.
Yes.
If someone is still feeling like, oh, my entire group is spending hours, days on one page, then it's going to be very difficult. So the very first thing we do is we take care of that head trash, because there's more than just decorating that we tell ourselves.
Right.
Like our handwriting. Oh, I couldn't possibly put my handwriting on a page because it's so sloppy and it's so messy and it's not pretty and etc. Do you know what? I'll let you know a little secret here. Every time, I don't care what your handwriting looks like, every single time your family reads something you have written by hand, they hear your voice. They hear your voice. They see you and they hear your voice. And so that's why I have a number of clients whose dexterity is becoming challenged, and they knew that was coming, and they've gotten their font digitized.
Oh, that's a neat idea.
So that their handwriting can still be in their digital albums.
That is so cool. And, the other thing I was just thinking of, besides photos, is I have recipe cards from my mom. Mm-hmm. And it's like, the past couple of Christmases, it's like, what could I do with these recipe cards to share with my kids? So I think, taking a photo of the recipe card and adding the story of, remember every Christmas Eve, we would have Lessa and grandma would make it like this or whatever, like that would be cool too.
It would be. And what to write, it's not nearly as time consuming on the what to write as it would be to figure out decoration. Just for here or whatever.
That's true.
Simply what to write is whatever. I mean, here's a tip that I give my clients to start with. Take your page over to someone and tell them about the page and record yourself doing that and then go over and write it.
Cool.
Because ultimately we want our pages to stand alone. We don't want someone to have to be there to tell us about it.
Oh, great idea.
Yeah, but specifically when we have a goal in mind, when we want to make sure that especially the siblings of the child, we want to make sure that they still know that they're seen, they're heard, and that who they are matters. We do want to be somewhat strategic. We want to keep that top of mind to put in the things that, I noticed, we were leaving that building and all of a sudden you were not next to me. And I was like, oh, doggone it. He's not next to me again. When I turned around, you were holding the door for someone. Oh my gosh. You write that real fast. That's all. Just whenever you get home, you write it.
Cool.
Yeah. And so, if we have a goal like for IEPs, like for therapists, like for just the child, making sure this child knows that we see all of him or her,
right?
Then we've got to be more strategic in what we write. But it still doesn't involve, let's see, if you've got a page, you just, what about those photos? What
right.
do you say? And you write it. And you don't worry about spelling or anything else. Oh, but I write uphill. Who cares? Oh, but I write downhill.
Well, and then that's part of you because, family members are reading it. It's like, this is how mom always wrote. Look at this, So that's just another piece of you that you're putting into that album,
Yeah, it's really, for me, it's love made tangible.
How wonderful. Yeah, I think I think so. I'm excited because it's like I want to learn how to do this because I have 4 grandkids, and that was like one of my goals about 6 years ago when I moved to Idaho was to keep up with photos, be able to have something tangible to share with family, and have it easily accessible, like you said, because it's like instead of scrolling through all these photos on your cell phone, it's like here is a special composed book just for this past year, this occasion, whatever. And so so I think you've just struck gold as far as coming up with ways to help people.
Have you are your grandkids local?
Yes.
Okay. Because I was going to say, if they're not, one of the coolest things you can do, especially as parents are sending photos of what their kids are doing, is for you to actually put them on a digital page and then write, oh my gosh, every time I see you do such and such, I'm amazed at, see, we're not, it's not about saying you're wonderful, you're wonderful, you're wonderful. It's about noticing who they are, noticing. I see, and I acknowledge you for all the work that you put into that. All the work, I win or lose, you show up and you help your team.
Right.
And then you put that on that page and you get it processed and send it straight to that
Cool.
for an ongoing album.
So that's a great idea. Oh, I love it. I love it.
Yeah, it's called Page Prints.
Huh.
And anyway, so yeah.
Well,
I got a million of them.
Well, and I think, that's the thing that's so wonderful is once you get started, then it's like, oh, and I could do this. And, and it's like, and, it's one of those things that really is doable. And sometimes just having that step-by-step process is what makes it real for you. So I encourage people to contact Barb, and you also have a Facebook group. What's the name of your Facebook group?
Scrapbooks Redefined.
I love it.
Scrapbooks Redefined.
Okay, so let me type that up here. Scrapbooks Redefined. So that would be Barb's Facebook group that you could go to, and
it's all about this. It's all about this. It's a no craft zone. There are 63 Facebook groups all about decorating pages. This group is all about not.
Cool. So Redefined, if I can just spell right when I'm typing here. So go to Barb's Facebook group.
Love to have you.
Redefined. And what closing thoughts, or if you have another short story that you want to share with us, would you like to share as we close out?
Which one? I think I want to share with you something that could make a difference. I have a sense to actually someone right now who maybe, anyway, I didn't know what I had in my hands. But I knew that in 1982, when my father suffered a massive heart attack, and I saw how he was being treated in the hospital, that, oh no, this will never do, because they were very professional, but very,
like clinical or
detached. And this makes me think of our kids as they're getting treatments in hospitals, of our spouses when we're in there. But I panicked and I thought, what can I do to help them see who this guy is? Because they would never treat him this way if they knew who he was. And so I went and I grabbed photos and individual photos at their house. And in the ICU, grabbed everyone. It didn't matter if they were really a therapist or a doctor or a nurse for my dad. I just grabbed them and had them look at the pictures and told them stories verbally. I had nothing for them to read or look at. Told them stories. And by George, I saw a shift. I saw them touching him. and I saw them interacting with him in a softer way. And lo and behold, and truly, it was amazing to see. He eventually died, but I knew that something had shifted. That was when I first saw that photos grabbed their attention and then photos captured their hearts. That was when but I didn't put two and two together until 2002. I'm a slow learner myself.
Well, and I think, I think that's a perfect story to show that, yes, we can use this in many ways at school meetings, but thinking of the other environments our kids are in, like that is so helpful, or other family members.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think the whole idea of photos grab attention and stories capture heart is exactly what we want for people that are interacting with our kids, right?
Yeah, and there was some research done years later by an Israeli radiologist who proved that when photos were attached to pathology, that they were read at a higher quality and efficiency than when they weren't attached.
That's amazing.
And so that just goes right along with letting someone see who this person is when they aren't so sick,
right?
And more about them. So there is not only my immediate experience and proof, but there is proof that photos make a difference.
Well, thank you so much, Barb, for being a guest. I'm so glad we got connected. It's funny because, like I said, we were first in a group for people wanting to learn about Facebook Lives. So it's more of a business oriented, but it's like, then we found each other, and it's like, we're both, we come from the same perspective and the same values. And so it's been a treasure to get to know you and to know the stories that you can share and that we all can, and to make sure as we start our new school year that this is something that could make an incredible impact on your kids' year, when the staff knows more of your child's story. So thank you again, Barb. And
my pleasure.
I want to remind our viewers and people watching the replay to put in your comments and questions, because both Barb and I will come back and check in, and we'd love to continue the conversation. I also want our viewers to know that I'm taking a vacation, a short vacation before school starts. So next week, next Thursday, I'll be in Canada, I think. We're going to the Olympic National Park and then up to Victoria, Canada, the island of Victoria. So I won't have a live show next Thursday unless I just do a quick hi, look at these wonderful trees here. But I want you to know we'll be back the following week. And so remember, we are weekly, unless I'm on vacation, every Thursday at noon Mountain Time. And I want to wish you a wonderful start to the new school year, and start thinking and then start acting on how you can combine photos and stories and make a difference for your child. So I am Charmaine Tanner. Thank you for being here with us, and we shall see you in a couple weeks. Bye-bye.